Hi, I'm Sid Henderson. I'm an instructor here at Tucson Parks and Recreation, and today I'm going to make a Reticello pendant. Now, a Reticello is an interweaving, crisscrossing sort of latticework pattern that is common to both furnace work glass and fire or torchwork glass. I'm pretty sure the furnace one came first, but this is a miniaturized version of it that could be worn as a piece of jewelry as opposed to a giant glass face. For this project, you will need a glass tube about this diameter, about an inch, a narrower glass tube, maybe a half an inch or a quarter an inch, and that'll be your blowing tube and punty. You'll need some sort of silvery glass for the lines or a colored glass, but I recommend North Star, amber purple. It's very easy to work with. And you'll need a dark colored backing. I like this rust color myself, but blue and black are also commonly used. You'll need 2 solid punties for later on when you're working with your pendant. You'll need a marver for making lentil shapes. This is a lentil marver. Some various tools to grab because you don't want to use your bare hands. Some severing tools for tubes. And a marver for opening up holes just in case. Alright, so I already kind of shortcutted some of this process. I don't think you guys really need to see me pull stringers. Where did they go? Oh, here they are. So I've already pulled from my silver glass, the amber purple, some very fine stringers. And you'll kind of want to pick out the thickest one to start with, so you can get the hang of it. And you'll also want to break off a good section of your thick clear tubing and attach it to your narrower tubing as a marver, like so. Or if you're old-fashioned, you can also do something called pulling a point. You'll want to start with a nice gentle reduction flame and just sort of warm up your tube out here. Make sure that it's well above 1,000 degrees so that you don't get any cracks. Now, this process does tend to be a risky one, especially when you're putting on the stringers. Your tube may crack. If that's the case, it's not the end of the world. You just simply put the flame back into reduction like this, cover the crack with soot, that'll heat it back up, and then slowly back off the gas or increase the oxygen, causing the crack to refuse together and heal. Alright, that should be good. Now, the trick with Reticellos is laying a stringer down on a nice straight line. The straighter and cleaner and more evenly spaced your stringers, the prettier the end product. So what I've found is that if you hold the tube in your left hand and the string in your right, which is backwards from what most people do, I'm able to lay down a clean line. So you can sort of just figure it out for yourself which hand you prefer. But the neat trick about this is when you don't want to hit the stringer directly with your flame. What you want to do is glance it, or you want the main bulk of the flame to smash into the tube. And sort of like the flame that's bouncing off the side of the tube hits the stringer and melts it. And that'll create nice straight lines. So what I'm going to do is start up at the top. Now that the stringer is glowing, I'm touching it to the surface. And just find that sweet spot where it's pretty stiff, but it's still fluid. And I'm going to lay down a nice straight line, 2/3 of the way down the tube, just like that. I'm going to flip it around so that I can see it on the other side of the glass, and I'm going to lay down another stringer approximately the same length on the other side. Now I can flip that so that halfway around I can make my quarter. There we go. And flip it around again. Up. So that's what I brought up. It's not the end of the world. We'll just increase the heat. Oops. Increase the gas. Heat this back up again. And I guess I just should have heated the tube a little bit more. I'm going to cut back on the gas a little bit. I know part of this trouble is because I am using a soft glass kiln setting and not a boro glass setting. So it didn't anneal quite right. However, this is an excellent opportunity to show you how to fix a problem. So it's fine with me. There we go. So as you can see, I'm just going around remelting that crack until it vanishes. Just retrue the tube. And now that we have stringers attached to this piece, it'll actually be easier to tell how hot the glass is because the amber purple glows a lot more. Alright, we'll just turn this back down to a cooler temperature and keep going. So, once again, I'd like to reiterate that I'm chasing the flame with my stringer. It's not hitting the stringer directly. If the top is messy, you don't have to worry about that much because later on in the process we'll actually be removing some of the top. Now that we've laid the first set of stringers on, I'm going to heat this up. I'm also going to heat a glass rod for puntying. And I want to make sure and reheat the tube really thoroughly so that it doesn't shatter when we do, from all of that cold working. So basically, I've got sort of like a pad here at the tip of my punty that's flat. Some people call that a Maria. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to heat it up and do what's called a cold punty. So it's glowing hot, the thing it's attaching to is not. There we go. Once it attaches, it'll stick, but it won't adhere perfectly, and that way I can break it off cleanly later. Now what I'm going to do is heat the whole tube up nice and evenly. And once it's soft enough, I'm going to give it a gentle twist. Not quite. Kind of good to heat it up slowly and gradually, because if you overheat it, it's gonna warp and slump and stretch too in weird ways. But if I heat it up gradually and evenly, then it'll give me a lot of resistance when I twist, which is preferable. You don't want to twist it too hard or too unevenly. And I usually don't twist while it's in the fire. You want to heat it up in the fire, pull it up, and then twist. If you hit it at an angle, you can also control where the heat goes. So for example, right now the nose is getting exposed to more heat than the backside, and that enables you to control how twists work. One final perk about twisting it is that if you have wonky lines that are a little wiggly, this will actually straighten them out. There we go. Almost done. There we go. A sharp tap. There we go. We'll disengage that cold punty I made. And it's always a little bit deformed when you twist it. So what I'm going to do is just heat everything up really nice and evenly. This has the added benefit of cooking the stringers into the glass. That's what we call it when they melt, fall into the glass and sort of merge with it. Now if I give it some gentle puffs and a little bit of elbow grease here, I can true it back into form. Alright, that's good. And it's also nice and heated, so I can switch back to the tiny torch to do the second side. I'm not going to go into this in great detail because it's the same process, except this time you're hitting it at an angle and you're crisscrossing the lines, making A shapes, or B shapes. If any of them come loose, just melt them back in by letting them do their thing and pushing them back on with a... There you go. Alright, so I'm going to reduce the outside gently, just make sure it doesn't crack. There we go. And once again, I'm going to get that punty ready. There we go. And I'm going to heat this up. I'm going to give it a very gentle, subtle twist. And the only reason I'm doing this is just to straighten out the new lines I've made. And at this point, I'm going to heat up the tip. And what you need to do is pull it straight out. What this does is make a What this does is it makes a vanishing point for the spiral pattern for this pendant I'm going to make. So you just want to keep heating up the tip, pulling it out straight, discarding. There we go. This is the last step in forming the pattern. You're going to heat the whole thing up. You're going to start melting it down, condensing it, and you want to keep condensing it until you can get the whole pattern molten. And you also want to get a little bit behind the pattern as well. So just continue to heat and condense it until the whole thing is nice and molten, and also the bit behind the pattern. Because what we're going to do next is blow this into a hollow sphere, and we basically want the pattern to end around the equator. Alright, there we go. You want to kind of blow slowly and gently. And you don't want to blow out too much. If you blow this bubble too thin, the pattern will actually really implode heavily and you won't be able to make anything out. So what I've noticed is that the best way to do this is to implode the pattern gently instead. You can also sort of plunge the tip into the flame, and that helps round it out. And if you heat the base, there we go. If you tilt the point outward, it'll heat the equator more so that when you blow on it again, it'll expand outward. You only want to use the most gentle of breaths for this. If you blow too hard, it'll just become bubble trash. You can blow on it a little harder once it starts to cool, but you'll have to kind of, get a feel for that. There we go. Alright, now I can start to implode the front. And this will implode it just a little bit, but that makes sort of like a beautiful raised pattern. So as you can see, the hot flame sort of flattens out the tip of that ball. And now it's just a matter of condensing the edges. You always want to keep rotating while you're doing this. Otherwise it'll slump to one side. But, as you can see, as the lens thickens, the pattern collapses into some neat little spiral patterns. I'm just going to cool the tip off a little bit. Blow the outside a little bit more. Alright, now that I've got the pattern all the way onto the pendant, I'm going to slowly fuse the rest of the tube, forming a bead. If you do this carefully, you can inhale, but not with your lungs, but just with your cheeks. Spit the air out, and that'll make sure there's no bubbles trapped around the edges. Next, you're going to pull out your backing. You want to heat that up carefully. This is a good time to do backing because it's just it's really easily, or it's really well attached. You're not going to have to worry about anything crazy happening. If there's a dimple in your pendant, you can always kind of hollow implode it a little, or solid implode it a little bit by heating up the ring and then gently pressing down. You can do that while you're multitasking. You can do that while you're heating up your backing color. So what I'm going to do with the backing is just form a really nice big glob. Stick it in the middle. There we go. Just weld it off. Now I'm going to keep twirling it until it forms a really nice soft bead in the middle of the pendant. There we go. And that'll form a backing to your Reticello pendant. After you smash it into a pancake, you can keep heating it up till the edges fuse seamlessly together. Alright, as you finish off your backing, you want to run it through the flame one more time just to make sure that there's no chill marks, which look like little ripples. I'm going to turn down the heat a bit now because my goal isn't really to melt like a big blob. And I'm going to make a punty with the same thing I used as a backer so that it doesn't show up. There we go. Just heat that tip up. Let the pendant cool down. And then do a cold punty. There we go. Just like that, right in the middle. Kind of want to just hold it still a little bit while it sets up. The more you move this, the weaker it gets. So now the trick is we need to separate the pendant from the tube. So we're going to heat the other side of the pendant up now. I'm going to turn the temp back up again. Once you start seeing that the tube is getting soft, you want to stretch and blow. And the trick is just to keep that opening large so that you can pop it and tear it open. There we go. Now that's done. And this is what you need your opener for. Just want to keep opening the lips up over and over again as you melt it. You can even come in with a scissors and cut some of it off, which is what I'm going to do. And then you want to come back in with the pliers and yank away any sort of molten bits you see that have bubbles in them. You'll know what the bubbles are because they'll show up brightly. And you kind of always want to keep pulling away from the center. So what this is going to do is try to collapse in upon itself. We're trying to make it so that it just fills in smoothly and doesn't form a bubble in the middle. There we go. Alright. Now if you sort of heat the outside of the ring, it'll melt and fuse outwards rather than inwards, and that's what we want. So as you can see, if you keep carefully and gently melting it, you won't have an air bubble in the middle. It'll gradually just form into a dimple that fills up. And then you can shape it into a nice lens. You want to flame polish the lens a little bit. Make sure it's nice and clear. And then we're going to switch back to the miner torch to make the pendant. To do that, you're going to heat up one side of the pendant and the back. Heat up a nice glob of glass for the pendant. You can use whatever one you want. Let that cool gently. There we go. Tap off the back support and flame polish punty mark out of existence. Going to hold it up to the end of the flame to anneal it.